Hello guys, welcome back to Carnivore Muscle Ramblings, segment number 41, the best place to get your carnivore bodybuilding questions answered. In fact, I think it's the best place to get all of your questions answered if you're here right now. So, yeah, I'm glad you're here.
I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, we're answering more than just bodybuilding, health, fitness, nutrition questions today. We're answering life questions. So,
Live questions.
this is, you want total access to me and Jonathan's personal and private lives? Go for it.
Yeah, no holds barred. So you guys may have seen today, admittedly my own late notice, I did pump out a community text message to you all today, and I said, you know, send me your training footage, share it with me for Google Drive, whatever, and Jeremy and I will have a look at it live on air, we'll critique it. To my knowledge, one person has kindly obliged. We're grateful for that, so we can actually look at it and see what's going on. We'll probably get to that in a little bit. All we'll do is you'll just share the screen and put it up. Mike's in the chat now, so it's excellent. So I'm going to scroll through. So we've got Zbigniew, of course, first place. 100 competition coins awarded. We've got Ben in second place. How many points should we give to second place, or should we not?
50.
50.
I would do 150, 25 seems reasonable.
Yeah. All right then. Rick's got 25, so it's not done too bad.
Excellent.
Rick, you're nearly there. Just a few 100,000 more to go. Yeah, Tom had duck last week. That's cool. We don't have duck that often. We only ever have duck if we're at like a Chinese restaurant, or if we're at a buffet or something. Like duck over here isn't very common. People don't really cook it, but it's something we all like and we do have. You know, it's not like exotic for us really. What about you? What's it like in the US?
I usually get some right around the holidays, but you can find it at most restaurants. Not restaurants. Most grocery stores you can find some duck meat.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's delicious.
Yeah, the ones over here, we get like packs of like shredded duck we can like reheat. Then it comes with the pancakes and the hoisin sauce, which is a bit annoying because I don't really want that stuff. But yeah, I think in some stores over here there's a shop over here called Iceland, and they do like frozen foods. At one point you could buy like a pack of duck breast meat. It wasn't actually too expensive, and you just reheat that, and it was quite nice. I don't think they do it anymore. Rick would be in heaven. And it was cheap and affordable as well, not expensive.
Nice.
I saw an iguana on the road, but it ran away before I could catch it. Oh yeah. I feel like it's been forever since I've done a live, but I've done like 3 last week.
Yeah, I apologize for last week. My brother was getting married. He had a Monday afternoon wedding at his house, so that's.
That wasn't very thoughtful. He should have rescheduled it.
I should have told him that he needs to plan his life around the Carnivore Muscle Ramblings, like so many of our audience does.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to be here now. It does feel like it's been a really long time since we've been on camera together.
Yeah, it's been too long, I think. Too long. Guys, please put your questions in our chat if you have any. We're actually going to expand it today, so we're going to do nutrition, training, and life questions. So even if it's not a question to give you more information or offer our experience, it could just be a question for the sake of asking a question. Just as the chat is so busy right now, please put a Q in front of it so I don't miss it.
Q stands for quality. Quality.
Excellent quality. I was debating actually today, Jeremy. So I was looking at the prices to get the upgrade version of StreamYard. It works out like £15 extra a month. But I was thinking, 1080p, that's a lot of pixels. Versus the current 720. I don't know. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I would look at what other benefits there are. I haven't looked at the actual pricing. I know what you're paying now, and that's kind of the limit of what I would feel comfortable paying unless you were on a significantly larger number of platforms, because I think right now you can live stream to up to 3 platforms at once, I think.
Yeah, I think I can get quite a few. Yeah, and I just use Facebook and YouTube. So
yeah, I think the next tier takes it up to like 7 or 10. So I guess that would be my bigger concern, more so than video quality. But
I just use Facebook and YouTube. So. See, I'm famous.
I think the next tier takes it up to like 7 or 10. So I guess that would be my bigger concern, more so than
It's me.
That's good, because the more famous you are, the more I can ride your coattails.
That's exactly what I'm hoping for. For your sake.
I
The only
appreciate
thing
that.
about this is to go live on Facebook, you do have to change the privacy settings every single time. So as soon as I hit live on here, I don't automatically go live on Facebook. The privacy settings every single. Okay. Okay. Yes. Anyway, I'm going to be having some snacks throughout this talk today because I'm a bit overrun today, a bit out of my sync from my usual schedule. My appetite's still pretty crap. Surprisingly, the experiment that I ran for the last 3 days didn't really do anything with my appetite. It just slowed me down, made me feel horrendous. I've got a really bad headache, but I feel quite happy for the most part, just apart from the headache.
And for those unawares, what experiment have you been doing, or do you want to divulge at
Yes.
another time?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll raise the what's the word? Raise the thing for it. Raise the alarm. I don't know what it is. But yeah,
Sure.
so I did a 3-day fruit, honey, and meat diet. So my diet with less butter, with fruit or honey, basically. I was planning to do it for a 7-day period, but once I got to the end of day 1, I felt horrendous, and I was like, I don't want to feel like this for very long. So I thought I'm gonna scale it back a bit. Anyway, in that time, I managed to get 1 training session in. I logged everything, so everything I could log through my Renfo body fat bioimpedance scales. What else to do? My bowel movements, I tracked that. Everything that I could possibly track that I thought was quite useful. So I can show you guys cause and effect, what that kind of diet does to me, and what I think of it. I finished writing a presentation for it today, so probably film that maybe tomorrow if I get time. I kind of created it to be a bit like a study, as if you're reading a study. So introduction, research, methods, I don't know, methods, analysis, results, discussion, conclusion, conflict of interest. Yeah, I think it'll be informative for people. So I've made the I've taken the leap just to see what would happen, and my hypothesis was that it would go tits up, and it did. So, yeah. Anyway,
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that.
yeah, hopefully it'll be a good video. I think it'll just be helpful to people because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Like I thought my training performance would go up. It didn't go up. Because everyone says, oh, if you have some extra carbs, you'll feel a bit better and it'll perk you up a bit and gives you instant fuel. The reality is it didn't do that. My training performance went down.
Yeah.
And like quite significantly. It wasn't like a matter of like 4 seconds of time under load. It was about 10 to 15 seconds. So that really shocked me. Mystery. Alright, so what is the advantage of StreamYard over just streaming through OBS? Good question. So, with using OBS, in order for myself and Jerome to stream and be both on video, that would involve me using a third-party app or software to have him on the screen. Now, this is fine, however, it's reliant that my internet is really, really good. And if my internet times out for some reason or something happens, Jerome will at least still be able to talk and continue for the stream. And in that time, I can go to my phone or some other secondary means if needed. Evidence to support this claim: every time I go live with Bart, the quality is shit. So, yeah, that's basically why. Now you can do it but you have to be reliant on the fact that everyone's got good video, audio, no extra processing, things like that. The other limitation as well is I can't put questions on the stream. I do know how to, and I can work out the way to do that without much issue. The thing is, when you do that, it's a real pain in the ass. Evidence to support that claim: every time Bart goes live, he says, oh, fuck me, the chat keeps jumping. So I'm trying to limit the amount of stress from doing these lives. So that's 2 reasons. The third reason is when you create a broadcast link through StreamYard, it makes it easier for you to direct it to different channels. So, for example, I could put this on Jerome's channel, my channel, Facebook, or anything I want, really. I can also add in a description without too much hassle. Whereas when you use OBS, it will always save the same description, so you have to manually go into YouTube's Content Creator Studio to insert a specific custom description. But yeah, that's 3 reasons. What other reasons are there?
I think StreamYard is a little bit more beginner friendly in terms of like Jonathan and I have access to a number of small buttons we can press at the bottom of the screen to change the layout of the screen. Where in OBS, if you really want to optimize OBS, you probably need at least 2 computers with dual monitor or 3 monitor support. And you need a screen basically dedicated to your studio mode in OBS. OBS is great for like streamers on Twitch who are just broadcasting like a camera and then like video games. But for some of the more intensive stuff that Jonathan and I like to do, StreamYard simplifies a lot of it. And you nailed it. If you're going to stream to multiple platforms, at least with OBS, you need multiple stream keys. And sometimes you have to generate those every single unique stream. And I've also had a lot of audio issues in StreamYard with OBS, where I've recorded locally and it sounds okay with some of the audio effects that I've put on. But then with live streaming, it's completely different, even though none of the settings have actually changed. Do you want, for the most part, straightforward and easy, or do you want to spend, countless hours trying to figure out how to optimize everything for your own individual needs?
Yeah, good points. I'll only add a few more things to that, some points you've missed. So I actually investigated towards like the streaming side of it versus recording side. I, for the life of me, can't work out how to make my audio sound like it does right now through this stream, through OBS. So I went through all the settings, I went through all the guides on YouTube, all the guides on the internet. I changed all the bit rates, all the output qualities, the kilohertz, you name it. Nothing could make the quality as good as this. The only way I can make quality of audio as good as it is right now is through local recording through my microphone's software. That's pretty much it. So it's a real pain in the backside. Like I recorded a video with Bart K about a week or so ago. So he sent me the video file and his local audio recording file. Now the video file, the audio in that is really shit. Like if you ask him, he'd say the same thing. For both of us, it's really crap. Now his local audio recording file, which he did himself manually and sent to me, that's much better. However, because it's local to him, it only has his local file. So in order to maximize audio quality, you have to have, for example, in this case, if I was to record something with Jerome, me recording it locally on my software, Jerome recording it locally on his software, then us putting those two things together in sync. So it's a real pain in the backside. So when you guys see like maybe Peter Attia's videos, maybe Paul Saladino's, all the people have got like 400k subs plus, Thomas DeLauer, for the most part, these people have separate people that work alongside to improve the quality of all this stuff. So I'd like to think we're probably in the upper echelon of our small little community in terms of quality, or I'd hope so anyway, because I've got the bloody 4K webcam apparently, so blimmin' hope so.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. We got some questions, perhaps I'll get to them. We've got 4 questions in a row. What do you reckon? I'm going to answer Joey's first, because he did ask the first question.
Sure.
So Joey asked, what are your thoughts on proprioceptive feedback during training to enhance mind-muscle connection? So I'm guessing that's the idea of doing touchy-feely work, a la Kai Green, when training your biceps or calves, or maybe quads. What do you think about touching the muscles?
I think whatever movement you're doing for an exercise, for a body part, you should feel that muscle being involved, but you need to be a little iffy, or not iffy, a little cautious. Hold a grain of salt back with how much feedback you put into proprioception. So like doing an underhand pull down, for an example, you have a lot more sensory nerves in your forearms, in your biceps than you do in your back, even though your back is a prime mover in that particular movement. So a lot of people will feel a lot of burning, a lot of discomfort in their forearms, in their biceps as they're doing pull downs, and they'll think that they didn't hit their back very hard, when in actuality, you just have a lot more nerves in certain parts of your body that are involved in that movement. And because of that, you may not feel it as much in your back. So some people will like pre-exhaust one muscle group before doing a compound exercise like that, so they can feel that muscle group working a little bit more. Can be useful, but I think really you'd almost be better off recording yourself doing a particular exercise and making sure that your form is on point and your execution is where it needs to be, than necessarily trying to put your mind inside of that muscle. What do you think?
Yes, I strongly agree with your statement. This brings me back to what I asked you. Do you remember maybe like 4.5 months ago, roughly? I'd say 4.5 months ago, roughly. I was mentioning that I was doing like a chest press and I couldn't feel it in my chest anymore. You sort of explained to me, well, it's still working your chest because that's a primary mover. It's just you happen to feel it more in your triceps, your shoulders, for example. So with that being said, today, for example, I did a chest press, a chest fly, a chest press, basically just to make the heavier weights feel like, to be able to use a lighter weight for the heavier lifts that I was doing. So I was pre-exhausting, basically. Then my last movement was actually a wider grip chest press. And I was doing that to try and eliminate some of the extra tension I might get through the triceps. But my biceps were on fire. But I was thinking about what Jerome said, and it's like, yeah, they hurt, but the chest has still got some capacity left. So I just kept moving until the chest wouldn't, when you're trying to fire it, like when it wouldn't fire anymore.
And we've kind of mentioned too that the other side of that coin is true as well, that just because you're feeling something working really hard doesn't mean it's necessarily a great stimulus for that particular muscle group. So glute bridges that a lot of people love doing, really heavy
Active insufficiency.
Yeah, you're putting the muscles in a position of active insufficiency where the actin and myosin filaments are so bunched up on top of each other that you get really ineffective cross bridging, and it kind of creates a cramping sensation that is often mistaken for a hard muscle contraction. Tricep kickbacks are the same way. I used to really feel those in my triceps, thinking like, man, this feels really, really effective. But it's when you look at strength and resistance curves, length tension relationship, some basic principles like that, you can see that some of these exercises are actually very suboptimal for the muscle group you're trying to work. So similarly, just because you don't feel it working doesn't mean it's not. Just because you feel it working really, really hard doesn't mean it's necessarily getting an ideal contraction either. So the truth is somewhere in the middle, which is why I recommended recording your exercise, checking your execution. Did you generate enough intensity? And possibly even more important than that is, are you progressing consistently?
Yeah, your muscles will do the work, guys. I think as much as we want to target and isolate our upper chest, for example, for a bloke, yeah, you'll find some movements will do that. But when you look at some of the MG data, if you just train it really, really hard, get close to failure, find a movement that allows you to lift safely with a heavy weight, everything will eventually have to come involved. Eventually. Just some exercises people use. Right now I'm using a lot of quite high incline chest / shoulder press. If I do a 90-degree shoulder press, it hurts my shoulders too much. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to limit the range of motion and do something which kind of works a bit of the upper chest, a bit of the shoulder. So I can still get a sufficient load on the front delt, but I'm not necessarily loading it directly because it just doesn't feel right at the moment. So, yeah.
Similar to how Henneman's size principle happens within a specific muscle group, that we recruit slower twitch muscle fibers first, and then as those fatigue, we start recruiting the intermediate and then the fast twitch fibers. That happens regionally within a muscle too. So even if we're working a chest press, whether it's flat or decline or incline, yes, some of those fibers are going to be preferentially recruited initially, but then as those fatigue, other muscle fibers are going to be recruited to continue and try and push that load. So you don't need to get overly picky with exercise selection if you can generate enough intensity safely.
I think so. Yeah, it's like we said before. It comes down to the big five. You might have some preferential kind of work. I mean, if you've been training for say 5+ years, the chances are your strong points are going to be your strong points. Your weak points will probably be your weak points, near enough forever, unless you're doing something drastically wrong. I think if you're right now, if I wanted to maintain my muscle mass, if I just do the big five, that would do it. That would do the job. As long as I could do it safely and all that sort of thing. I think a lot of these exercises are isolation kind of thing are overrated. There are some useful things you can do, like some people might get a resistance band, put it below their armpits behind them. They're just, so it's not necessarily a warm up to like burn out the muscle, but it's useful to help fill the muscle.
Yeah.
If you get used to that sort of pattern of loading,
Yep.
if you get used to thinking, okay, I'm going to bring my humerus across the body, if it makes you think that, yeah, the chances are you'll get more upper chest activation or whatever it happens to be. So some of these things are useful, but your training shouldn't be 20-minute warm-ups with lunges and step-ups and dumbbell flies and band it, this and that. Your warm-up should be basically just going to the gym and just your first exercise. But some people find these things a little bit useful. But I mean, if you're doing a warm-up for the sake of pre-exhausting, isolating, you shouldn't be doing 5 sets of it. Right. It shouldn't be 10 minutes. I think that's counterproductive. Next question from Ben. How's it going, Ben? I'm having great success with high-intensity training. I've heard some PTs mention that people plateau hard with this method of training. Please discuss, and would you use a block or volume training to break it up? Well, that's a good question. So I guess in this we can go into the element of our own individual recovery capacity, the myth of plateaus, and why this might not be useful. What do you think?
Yeah, I would answer by saying that the proper application of any valid theory of reality should yield continuous results until the natural conclusion is met. So if your volume, frequency, and recovery, all 3 of those are dialed in, then you should be getting stronger every single workout until you reach whatever the upper limits of your genetic endowment are. Now, that being said, if you hit a plateau, then you're either at your limit or one of those variables needs to be adjusted. There's kind of an implicit admission, or a tacit admission, I should say, that if your people do plateau training this way, that you don't plateau unless there's some progress initially. Otherwise, it would just be pure stagnation. So that's odd. I've never actually heard anyone say that about HIIT. I've heard people say that they get really, really strong, but don't necessarily put on a lot of size. But I wouldn't introduce a novel stimulus to try and break that up. If you're plateaued, and if what I do with my clients here in the studio is if I have, say, maybe 3 weeks where there's not any progress at all in any single exercise, then I'll either look at adjusting the volume, the frequency, or whatever workout split that they're doing. So I start everybody on a full body workout, and my clients make progress on at least one exercise, but usually every single exercise, every single week for months and months and months on end. And I just recently split one of my longest term clients into an upper body split. So he does upper body 1 week, and then the next week he does lower body. He started making progress again. So volume, frequency, and not just volume in terms of like how many exercises for one body part, but volume also over the course of your entire workout are all things that need to be regulated. And these are all dials that you can adjust to kind of get things moving again. What do you think?
Yeah, like you said, it comes down to like the 3 things you mentioned. I had this is in a consultation with someone recently, so I gave them a plan. I coached them for about maybe a month or 2, and they got great results. You know, I sent them on their way. You know, you don't need many more. You know what to do. You know how to adjust your training. Your diet's fine. You're making really good progress. I can't help you. I don't want to take your money because it's a waste of time. Just call me back at another point when something happens, basically. And he said, okay, so I've changed my training split around a little bit, a few different exercises. I said, oh, that's good. You know, that's fine. You want to target certain muscle groups. You might have a preferential treatment for shoulders versus chest, for example. So you might put shoulder press first. Now, what he said was, can I do more volume? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I read Arnold's encyclopedia, and I was looking at what they did. And they were doing 30, 40 sets, 2 to 3 hours a day. And I was like, okay, we're in for a bit of trouble here. And I think some people will find a new way to do things. I don't think it comes back to the first question, like, are you doing all those things? Are you going through Henneman's size principle, slow to fast twitch? Are you nailing those fast twitch muscle fibers, yes or no? I think this sort of situation where it'd be useful to see Ben's training in a video or something, we can actually see what he's doing right and wrong. I'm a bit off tangent here, sorry, my brain's a bit fried from the experiment. I may have to read this one again, but I will respond properly. And would I use a block of volume train to break it up? Probably not, no. It's because what, like Jerome said, what's been working before was working. There's a limiting factor here. And plateau hard, I mean, you'll never plateau if you continuously add weight to the bar or find a way to increase the load, the time of detention, the volume somehow, like your density of training. I would probably look at it from, are you doing exercises correctly? Is your diet on point? I know I'm working with you for diets, that'll be spot on probably. Volume training though, I think it just adds too many variables to it. What do you think, Jerome? Like,
Yeah.
okay, you're going to add 30% more volume. Okay, well, your diet then has to change. You'll then not have a good handle on what your current recovery is. So then you'll have to change other things as well. So I think it's like spicing up for the sake of it.
To give general guidelines, if someone was doing full body 3 times a week, the first thing I would do is cut them down to 2 times a week. And then before I took them down from 2 times a week to 1 time a week, I would look at how many total exercises and total sets are they doing within that one workout. If they're doing 20 to 30 sets, I would cut that down to maybe 2/3 before I would go to 1 time a week. And you remember that, like, the workout is just the stimulus. Like, you grow in recovery. So either the stimulus wasn't intense enough or something got flubbed up in the recovery. You're not getting enough food, not getting enough protein, you're not getting enough rest, sleep quality sucks. There are other life stress factors. While it's not exactly scientific in terms of being able to identify the exact cause of a stagnation, it's, there aren't that many variables either. So the more you can hold things consistently, the more objective you can be in determining what it is that really needs to be adjusted. So if someone is at a plateau, the first thing I look at is, well, what are they doing in the first place? And sometimes, if they're training 5 days a week, 50 to 100 sets of workout, I would probably cut that in half right off the bat and still keep them at 5 days a week. If they're training 3 days a week and I don't really want to make the workouts any shorter, I would take it down to 2 days a week. If they want to keep 2 days a week instead of going to 1 day a week, then we start looking at splitting the body into like upper, lower, or push-pull legs. There's a bunch of things that you can do, but you need a little bit of context. How long has somebody been training? What are the results been up until that point? How long have they been plateaued? But suffice it to say that if someone's not seeing any progress at all and they're relatively new to training, maybe within the first 1 to 3 years, there's probably something you can do to start stimulating progress again.
Yeah, thank you for articulating that 10 times better than I ever could. That's pretty much what I was trying to say, but never would have ended up saying. So cheers for that.
Yeah, I'm blaming the fructose.
It's the honestly, guys, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't eat the fruit.
Or Jonathan will get old Liam Neeson on your ass, and he'll come find you.
That's it. I'll come find you. Yeah, all I'd really add to that is find a new training intensifier. Because I know Ben, I know what he's doing. I don't think it's the other. I think it is the training intensifier he needs to add of some kind, maybe like a rest pause or a drop set. I'd also look at his soreness and things like that. A few things like that, like his recovery, his appetite.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is, honestly, Ben, if you have the capacity to do it, send us some training footage of you. Maybe next week or some point we can look at it and give you guys some pointers. I do advise that because it is a useful thing we can do on air live, and we can show you what is and isn't working. 9 times out of 10, it's not reaching what the high intensity training camp would say was effective enough.
And Jonathan has correctly pointed out in the past that if you're able to perform the same number of repetitions with the same weight, set after set after set, your intensity is probably sorely lacking. There should be a pretty significant drop off, almost on a set by set basis. If you do 300-pound chest press for 10 reps, your next set will probably be closer to 8. The one after that, maybe 6 or 7. And you'll kind of know when your body's done. And I tend to think if you can do more than, certainly 10 sets per body part per workout, your training intensity is sorely lacking, compared to training with proper intensity. It is true, sometimes you do need to introduce a little bit of volume to kind of compensate for an inability to generate sufficient intensity, but that volume shouldn't necessarily be high either. So if you wanted to introduce a block of volume, you could do that, but recognize also that, performance in any single lift, no matter how basic it is, there's going to be a skill component to it as well. So just because you make progress again because you introduce a little bit of volume, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily building muscle. You're just practicing that skill a little bit more than you were, and you're getting a little bit better in that regard. So that's a possibility too.
Yeah, I think we've covered that one quite well. Yeah, it's tricky without lots of context. As much as I already know about Ben, I think I'd have to see something really to work it out. I see people that I work with sometimes, and some have been PTs for 20, 30 years, sometimes longer than I've been alive. I look at their training, I'm like, that's not quite there yet. Yeah. Perception of exertion is quite a tricky one to underpin, I think.
And Ben, if you're speaking for yourself instead of just a generalism, feel free to send me or Jonathan what your actual training routine is. How many sets, reps, how often are you training? I'd be happy to look at that too.
Yeah. I'm just going to chuck up the super chat. Thank you, Joe, for the super chat. Much appreciated. So he found the proprioceptive feedback efficacious to bring up lagging body parts by discouraging my over-recruitment. I was curious if he had enjoyed some results. I have, like I kind of said, when I've done calf presses before, I've had a machine I could actually breach my calves. I've just held onto the inside, like the soleus or the gastroc on either side, and I've been imagining, thinking, okay, make that muscle as hard as possible, and the only way to do that is to fully extend your toe. So I've been doing that back and forth, and that's improved my muscular recruitment in my calves. So I found that quite useful. It's just a bit tricky to do that sort of thing with certain exercises. And any time it's unilateral, oftentimes you'll have to brace yourself on the other side. So a chest press to fill your chest, okay, well, that means your shoulder's going to go back here because you're not even, kind of thing. There's no sort of brace. So there's limitations, but I think it can certainly be useful for maybe smaller body parts.
It's an interesting idea, and I'll think about it some more. I'm usually so focused on trying to maintain proper form and breathing and monitoring cadence that I really don't notice the muscles themselves in terms of feeling. So I'll give that more thought.
Yeah, it's you have to switch it off in a way, don't you? Because when you're just moving it, you're just thinking, bring the elbow across here and make this muscle kind of inflate. It's a weird one. It's like the psychology of training. It's something you can't really show or tell someone, I don't think. Right, we've got next question from Susie. Thank you for joining us. Have you ever worn minimalist zero drop shoes for weight training or sprints? If so, how did those shoes work for you? I have. Have you, Jerome?
I have not.
Okay, so I currently enjoy a tremendous level of toe gaps in my feet. And that's partly from wearing things like that when I was a bit younger. I've never worn shoes which are too small for me. So I have had, I think, 2 or 3 pairs of Vibram 5-finger toe shoes. I've also had toe socks. What I noticed was when you start wearing them, you experience more pain in your feet because your muscles have to work differently to stabilize yourself, to keep you going, basically, keep you moving. For sprints, I did use them for sprints, actually. And interesting, what I found was I'm faster sprinting without shoes than with shoes. And that includes even the sprint spikes we used to wear back in the day. So, yeah, I think whilst I think having the right, what's the word? The right sole in the shoes is useful because it can give you a bit of snap, a bit of reflex. I think if you build your muscles up to a certain point, that is almost better than wearing the shoes themselves. I don't know. It's a bit out of my depth, this sort of question, because it's been a very long time, Drew. Very long time.
I chuckle a little bit because if I were to sprint, I would do it barefoot. And it's kind of the same thing. I tend to think that, we've been Homo sapien for 300 to 500,000 years. And for most of that time, we've been barefoot, sprinting, walking. And if we develop the strength in those muscles that are deep in the foot, and God knows it's been a while since I've seen foot muscle anatomy, I tend to think most shoes would be somewhat slightly detrimental. But that's a bold ass assertion on my part, and I have nothing to support that.
Yeah, when I lift, guys, I wear rider wear shoes, a wide toe cap, enough space around the heel. It gives me a lot of ankle stability, which I find quite helpful. Because when I'm in the gym, I'm not meant to be like ducking and diving. I don't need that kind of mobility. I just need mobility in my toes to do calf raises, to have ankle flexibility to do, you know, my squats or leg press movements. So yeah, good question.
Yeah, I always preferred squatting and deadlifting barefoot, but given the amount of, like, everything I have is plate loaded leverage, and so with all the plates I'm loading, I probably should wear steel toe shoes in my studio, just in the off chance I drop a plate. These are all things that need to be considered, I suppose.
Yeah, it depends on how many plates you're using, doesn't it, Jerome? I'm not using much at the moment, so
Yeah,
me,
true.
I use like two to a side or something. So,
but a 5-pound plate dropped on the foot just right, you know, could very easily break a toe.
yeah.
So while I don't want to necessarily start a movement of people that are wearing steel toe work boots to the gym, I wouldn't be against it either.
Like Branch Warren and Johnny Jackson.
Yeah. Some of those black and white pictures of Dorian Yates, his underwear and work boots.
They used to wear the ankles, the socks were like right up there, weren't they, up to the shins? Here's one. So, would fasting for a cut or a long, slow 1% a week be better? I'm guessing you're looking to lose about 20 pounds. This is an interesting one. Very, very nuanced, I think.
Yeah. I would say, what can you stick to, and what's going to create better long-term habits? So me, myself, I've done quite a bit of prolonged fasting in the past. I've done 2 1-week water fasts. I've done multiple 3-day dry fasts. But fasting for me, more often than not, creates kind of a binge fast habit that I don't want to reinforce. Fasting can be extremely powerful for fat loss, but at the same time, if you know that you have this tool available to you, it also encourages a mindset where you feel that you can be really irresponsible with your diet and then just fast it away. And that's not mentally or emotionally healthy for a lot of people. So while I used to be a big proponent of long-term fasting, I'm kind of getting away from that just based on how I seem to react to it. I like how I feel when I fast, but I don't like that. I feel like it creates this habit. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Or I can kind of feel like I can eat like shit or eat as much food as I want, you know, just binge on a huge meal, and then I can fast it away after 2 or 3 days. I generally feel best if I just eat 1 to 2 strict carnivore meals a day, and I've kind of given up on fasting in that regard.
Yeah, funny enough, my thoughts on fasting, I've realised they actually match to a T everything that Harry Soprano says. So he's like kind of the thought that you can use it to expedite some health benefits that might take a bit longer through just a low carb or carnivore diet, which I agree. Yeah, I mean, if you've got excess body fat to lose, you can do a fast and not then suddenly, you know, go off the rails. You can use it as an effective tool. But I think, like Jerome said, yeah, a lot of people do binge. Especially from the fitness community. Now, saying that, I mean, would fasting for a cut or a long, slow 1%? I had a question like this, I think, about 3 weeks ago. The question was something along the lines of, should I do 1 or 2 days a week fasting, or should I just reduce my intake by 15, 20%, wherever it worked out to be? I think part of it as well comes down to schedule. I think if you're in a position where you're sort of sat in a car for like, maybe you're a lorry driver, you sat in a car driving for a long period of time each day, you just sat there doing nothing. You might just fast during that period of time. You know, you don't have a high metabolic turnover during that period of time. You don't need a lot of extra electrolytes and things. Your body will just do just fine without, you know, just drinking some water and having some salt. So I think in that instance, yeah, it might be useful to do like a 1 day a week fast. But £20, that's quite lofty. For most people, that take about maybe 10 weeks to do safely. For most people, you could get a faster result if you're doing 1 day a week fast. So I might try that. But like Jerome said, if you do that, then the next day you're thinking, or I could really do with a Snickers bar or whatever you guys eat over there, or a Pop Tart maybe. And maybe don't do it. Just do like just work out the food grams, the macros, then just find a baseline amount and just deduct a bit. That's literally it.
I know more people that have been messed up from prolonged fasting than I know people that can safely implement 3-day or so fasts into their schedule on a somewhat regular basis. And really, I mean, we ought to be committed to health and first, and then results second. So it's unfortunately, it's one of those questions that's going to be kind of individual to your own personal preferences, likes, and needs. But yeah, it's certainly fasting would be a relatively quick way to take off 20 pounds. But I would be worried about the rebound afterwards. Trying to integrate food back into your diet on a daily basis. Then,
yeah, and of course the poundage that you lose straight away, that impact on your metabolism will be different to the poundage that you lose when you've already got 15 pounds off. If you start at say 20% body fat and say that 20-pound loss gets you to 10%, fasting during that 10% body fat phase, that's gonna be tough. We might not be tough; it'll be tougher. So like Jerome said, I don't think there's a clear answer for this. I think you can do it, but I don't know. That's a consultation question. I'd personally either consult with Jerome or myself privately to really get that one.
Consult with Jonathan.
This one. That one. That one.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Jerome's quite busy at the moment. Jerome won't talk to you, he's busy.
I'm busy.
Yeah. How's it going, Killdozer? I forgot his name already. I know he said it to me. I think it was Timon or Timon, something like that. I remember it being something like that. Hey Nicole, what's good? I'm recording with Nicole tomorrow. We're making a fabulous critique video on that Michael bloke, the one who does go to the gym and doesn't turn up in shape in bodybuilding competitions.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. I'll try not to ramble too much for that one. Sophie may be joining us. We've got Lambs in the house. I see you. We've got Barbara Shooty in the house. I recorded a video of her actually, I think it was last week. A nice little interview. She's a yoga instructor and she's been kind enough to deliver me with a free membership to her online site, which provides people with very informative and practical, useful yoga sessions. So it's like a guide thing. So yeah, great stuff. Appreciate that. Right. Question. Right, we're going to do this question from Mike. Then we're going to do Vegard Bell's question. Then we're going to put up on the screen the stuff that we mentioned earlier, the training footage. So Mike asked, I noticed during eccentric movements on bicep curls, I get bigger burn when my grip is kind of open versus grabbing dumbbell strong. Have you ever heard or experienced this, and why is this the case? So I'm guessing he's talking about the hand grip. So some people will have a hand grip like that, so they might just hold it like that. Some people will clench it really hard. Have you had experience with that, Drew?
For most people, I've actually seen the opposite, that if they're clenching really hard, they feel it more in their biceps. And that it's a point I usually make, that if people are sitting underneath a desk, you can, with your palms open, push up against the bottom of the desk, and you're doing a relatively hard isometric curl, but you may not feel it much. But if you squeeze your fists and put them against the desk, you'll feel it more in your biceps. And in that context, I think there's the squeezing creates a bit of a restricted blood flow occlusion effect. But my suspicion would be, if you're feeling your biceps more with your palms open, there's probably just more mental focus, kind of going back to the mind muscle connection, when you're doing biceps in that regard. compared to just the mental energy it's taking to just squeeze that bar or that dumbbell hard. But when I did bicep curls on a regular basis on a machine, I would always do palms open, and then I would just focus on the biceps, squeezing throughout the range of movement. So it's interesting. I'll think about that, but my experience has generally been the opposite. Even though I do bicep curls the same way you do.
Yeah. There's one thing that is apparent to me. If you're clenching your fists harder to hold onto a bar when doing curls, you'll have probably a higher muscle fiber activation, because your forearms are in a stronger position. There's less sort of like give. Now, when your hand is relaxed, I'd imagine you'd have an extended time and tension, because you no longer have that, like you said, the burning sensation, the lactic acid. You know, how did you phrase it?
Occlusion.
Occlusion, that's the word. Yeah. So the occlusion, you no longer have as much occlusion because your hand's open. Therefore, you might have an extended time to tension because you're no longer occluding the muscle. So it might be that the time and tension is giving you a greater burn because it's giving you a longer duration of time to feel the muscle. That is interesting there. But yeah, for the most part, I've had the same experience as Jerome, to be honest. Good question. I think we've got another question. Yeah. Can't read very well. There we go. So, question: should I take 1 to 2 weeks off every eighth week when doing calisthenics for maximum muscle recovery, or is it enough with 3 to 4 days or something? Ooh, this is a good one. This comes down to our deload weeks video and our specificity towards a certain muscle group deloading versus systemic deloading. Yeah. Jeremy, you can start.
Sure. I would preface this by saying that Jonathan and I are writing the end-all be-all book to carnivore bodybuilding. And the part of that book will be on autoregulation, which kind of covers this. But if your recovery is dialed in correctly, I don't think you need to take a prolonged layoff every 8 to 12 weeks or whatever, like some people do. I usually recommend taking a week or two, or sometimes a little bit longer off if I know somebody has been drastically and chronically overtraining, and then I kind of break them back into training after that. But if your recovery is on point, you're creating the stimulus with your workouts, and then you're experiencing the positive improvements in the general trainable factors of functional ability that come with proper strength training, then whatever frequency that is that allows you to fully recover and then improve on your next workout, it should continue again until you've essentially reached the upper limits of your genetic endowment. And we talked about plateaus earlier. So if you hit a plateau, it's oftentimes an indication that you're either overtraining or you're under recovering or some element of both. So I don't think most people need to necessarily program in, an extended layoff from training. It can be a good idea if you have a holiday coming up, or if you're going to be doing some traveling and you don't want to try and figure out how to make it work with your gym schedule. Take the week off, don't think anything about it, and then get right back to your training, when you're done. But I think if your frequency and your recovery is really dialed in, then it's unnecessary.
That sounds about right, actually. Yeah, I don't have much to add, really. People have this idea, like, I've been training for X period of time, therefore I need, or I should do something. I should, change the workout, should change this, change that. In most cases, guys, as long as your joints are fine, you're making some progress, there's no need to do anything. And if you can maximize recovery by, doing the life hacks, perhaps watch my anti-aging video that I posted like last week. That's brilliant. That's top-notch content.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously. If you're doing all those things, the chances are you won't need to do much actual extra auto-regulation. You might just be having issues with certain exercises. It might be, for example, say you can get really close to failure on a push-up, So you're doing your push-ups, you know, that's quite safe and easy to get to failure because you'll just fall on your chest if you can't do it anymore. If you're training that muscle group really, really hard, so your shoulders working, your triceps working, your chest, you might just have to deload that one exercise. So it might mean you do a slightly wider stance. You might just do it on an incline, so doing it pushing up against a bed or something. You might just change the angle to make it a bit easier. It might not be that you have to completely omit training. Now, with that being said, we are not saying that if you continue to train, it will mean that you keep all your muscle mass. There's been studies where people have taken as much as 2 to 3 weeks off and not lost any muscle mass. You might lose ability because some exercises are, in fact, a skill. So if you're doing a one-arm push-up, yeah, you'll probably lose stability, so you won't be able to do it as well as you could before. But you won't necessarily lose strength and muscle. It just means you have to relearn it slightly. And what else is that? I'm missing something, Jerome. What is it?
No, I think you were. Sorry, I was thinking of some other sub point when you were talking about that.
Yeah.
When I was just thinking back to Henneman's size principle, how it applies across muscle groups too. So if you're trying to do a push-up, and let's just say you're hitting failure and you can't do that last push-up, and your chest is pushing as hard as it can, your anterior delts and your triceps are still contracting forcibly to try and lift that weight. So, yeah, what the other point I was going to make, sorry, is your body doesn't really know what a prolonged layoff from any stimulus is. It's not saying, okay, cool, like we're finally getting a break. Now we can kind of overcompensate. If you take it out of the context of exercise and put it into any other context, our body knows stimulus, response, and adaptation. And it's just that cycle over and over and over again. Like if we're getting enough food, we're constantly growing hair, right? If we break a bone, there's going to be continued healing. And it's not like we need to take a week off of doing everything so we can continue to heal that bone. It's stimulus, response, and adaptation. And as long as you're giving your body in terms of what it needs for recovery, then I really don't think you have to do anything fancy in terms of recovery. But I'm sorry. You were I think you were one step away of trying to complete whatever thought you had, and it eludes me.
I don't think it is coming to me. Yeah,
Don't eat fruit, guys.
Don't eat fruit, guys. And about a week ago, I started some painkiller medications, and I'm not quite as sharp as I usually am. So yeah, it might take a bit of, I don't know, forcing out of me to get the right answer. But yeah, I think the deload thing is overstated, overrated. And there's nothing wrong with just taking an extra day off the gym anyway. Yeah. Just take a day off, you know.
Yeah, and Jonathan's pointed out too in the past that if you need to deload, you're probably doing too much already, and the too much isn't necessarily in terms of intensity. It's probably a volume and frequency thing that needs to be adjusted. And you'll see deload weeks programmed into Westside Barbell, programmed into 531, programmed into Max OT, Starting Strength, and some of these other more popular programs will have deload weeks usually before a programmed week off. Well, it kind of carries the implication that they know there's a degree of overtraining to begin with. Jonathan and I, for the most part, are trying to advocate a minimum effective dose when it comes to exercise, and that'll be a little bit different for everybody. But the basic fundamental principles are the same. You give yourself the best possible stimulus for the desired result, and then as much time as your body needs to fully recover from that, and then you just repeat.
Yeah. You just reminded me, actually, I spoke to someone recently, and she came to me for help because out of everyone in this space, I seem to be the person with the most similar kind of experience as what she's going through. She's got like a spine disease, basically, and she's doing 185 sets per week. So I spoke with her and said, well, let's just get your diet right first, you know, get that right. So just make sure the diet's right, because that's where everything starts from. Whether you're training or not, the diet will always be there. You'll always be eating food. So make sure the diet's bang on. And yeah, so she's doing 185 sets, which is a PB for me, people I've spoken to. Prior to that, I think it was 134 or something? I don't know.
Something like that.
Right about there. Yeah. And anyway, I was like, she suffers with the same symptoms as me. And so I just said, look, whatever you do, just follow this diet plan, be strict. when you run into issues, which I'm quite sure you will, please consult with me again, and I'll write out a plan for you. I'll do whatever. People do tend to overdo it, and I think you're trying to, like Jerome said, and like I keep saying, minimal effective dose, manage your recovery on a day-by-day fashion. If your lifts aren't going up, take an extra day off. Is everything else optimized? Are you sleeping properly? Yes or no? I'm not sleeping that well at the moment, so neither is Jerome. So we're probably in a state at the moment we're just trying to just keep on what we can. So we're not afraid to take an extra day off because we need it, you know. So it's not a programmable thing. I think it's an what's the word? Ad hoc. I don't know what that is. Yeah,
ad libitum?
As needed. Ad libitum. Yeah, I guess so. That's right.
It'd be at liberty.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Just on that point, Ben said, "Thanks for answering. Not plateaued." I just heard in the fitness scene that it's something that usually happens with did training. Yeah, I think a lot of it is people get bad joints because they're using an exercise which might be not quite right for them. I mean, the chances are, like the 2 gyms that I use, each gym has 2 chest press pieces of equipment. Both of them are a bit shearing on the shoulders. They're a bit. I couldn't do them to progress, but after a period of time of just doing those, I have to find a way. Like I mentioned earlier, I do a pre-exhaust or something, so people will get into that point where their body isn't dealing with just doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's the same thing for like long distance running. You're doing the same thing. If you're running like 20 miles a day or something, eventually something's going to happen. You know, it's very hard to manage recovery at that kind of level. So it might just be a case of adding in some pre-exhaust if that's a person's issue. But yeah, it's a good question, Ben. I think it's quite well thought out. Do I have any more questions?
I
Got
think
Michelle in the chat.
You have one at the very
Jeremiah.
bottom.
Oh, there we go. Will Michael Jordan still be considered as the greatest basketball player of all time if he played all over the world? Yeah.
I mean, I don't usually get involved in GOAT conversations because you're comparing athletes from different decades when the game has changed so radically.
Also, the creatine now is better.
Yeah.
We've got all sorts of creatine now.
Yeah.
How to not become Ryan Gosling? Is it bad that I don't know who that is?
The guy from the Barbie movie. Don't dye your hair. Don't dye your hair blonde. I don't know. I think there's a lot of people that probably like to be Ryan Gosling. I'd certainly like to have his bank account. But
yeah, well, imagine he's just a rich actor or something. So yeah, how to not become Ryan Gosling? I don't know. Join Carnival Muscle Ramblings and go to the gym and stuff, and shave your hair off.
Grow your hair out. Or grow it out as long as you can.
We've got another question here as well. Is 50 push-ups a day enough? It's definitely enough to do 50 push-ups. Yeah.
It depends how you're doing them. You know, you could use a toe strap and do a time static contraction and get a hell of a upper body pushing movement out of 1 push-up. You could do them super slow and probably really struggle to get 10 push-ups done. 50, the way that they're normally performed, is probably just going to make you really good at push-ups. You know, you see most people that entered the military do hundreds of push-ups a day, and you know they're walking around at 170 pounds, kind of lean, but certainly not building an appreciable bodybuilder looking chest. But could you do push-ups in a way with enough intensity to give you enough size and mass and density in your chest? Yeah, I think so. But you're going to be doing them very, very differently than how most people do push-ups.
I think if you're just going to do push-ups, I think maybe get those spinning floor handles or something. Find out another way to change the grip. You're going to get fed up after a while of just having your knuckles and wrists facing into the ground. So if that's all you're going to do, try and find a nice way to do it, I think. Right, now we're going to commence the ultimate Carnival Bodybuilding live Q&A, sports performance analysis, critique thing.
Excellent.
Right. How do I do this? I've got to share a screen of an American.
It's a good starting point.
It's this technology, Jerome. I'm not the best expert at all this sort of thing. Man of my years doesn't, you know.
It's okay. It makes for better entertainment if we have to figure this out on the fly.
Yeah. Oh. Something's coming up. Oh, that's a lot of people, Christ. Okay. So you should see. Jerome, let me know if you can see the screen.
Yep, I can see it.
All right. So Mike from Raw Primal Mike has sent us this video. We're going to look at it. I don't know what it is. I'm hoping it's him training in the gym and not anything else. Fingers crossed. Yeah, I think he's doing a dumbbell curl, so we'll see. Make sure it's in high quality for your viewing pleasure. We're just going to do a critique anyway, so we'll watch it first, then have a look. So that's Mike with the guns out. Look at that. Look at the shreddedness. Jeremy, you that shredded yet?
Not yet.
Bicep curls. So feel free to critique if I'm doing for too long or too short of concentric and eccentric movements.
I've got 2 things to note so far. Look at those veins though, Jerome, look at that. What do you think of this for Tom and Deload?
Sorry, put a note in the private chat.
Right?
Right, there we go. There we go.
That brought me a lot of joy.
I like to see people trying quite hard. That looked hard. Alright, you got some notes there, so...
Yeah, I probably should.
I got it.
Sure. Do you want to start?
Yeah, maybe we do 1 point each.
Sure.
Maybe start with like the fundamental bit, so what we saw at the very start of the video. I think for me, what I'd personally do is do both hands at the same time, or just focus one arm at a time. So left, 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 you know, to failure, then right, right, right to failure. That's the most obvious thing for me. There's about 4 more things, I think. Jerome, what do you think other than that?
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought too, is I would train bilateral instead of unilateral, one arm at a time. And the reason for that is when one arm is curling, the other arm is resting. So you're just making your set take a little bit longer than it has to be, because you're in this constant cycle of like lift and then rest, lift and then rest. Where if you just train either one arm at a time, or if you train both arms at the same time, you know, you're going to cut your workout volume, or sorry, the amount of time that you're spending doing that exercise to a fraction of what it currently was. Neither one of those is going to make a big difference in terms of like hypertrophy or strength, but in an efficiency standpoint, either one arm or both arms at the same time.
Yeah, what I'd add to that is when you're holding one weight, but you're not lifting the weight with that one side, your grip still has to work. So you're tiring out your forearms, perhaps, and your hands, but you're not providing adequate stimulus to your biceps because they're straight down from the body in a relaxed position, effectively. So I think you'd get probably more time to tension, more intensity, doing one side at a time. That's the first thing. Jerome, what was the second thing you saw?
Yeah, similar to what you just said. Second thing I saw was use an effective range of movement. Jonathan's right. When your arms are straight down, there's essentially no utilizable tension on the biceps, but your forearms still have to work. So you could either, if you wanted to, you could hold one arm statically, kind of out to the side at about a 90-degree angle while you're curling. You could, even if you still wanted to alternate, you'd only go maybe halfway down, but you'll make the exercise more efficient from a time standpoint if you only use a range of movement that keeps tension on the biceps. So only go up so high that you still feel the bicep significantly working, and then only go down so low that once it starts feeling like a lot of the weight and a lot of the tension is coming off at the bicep, don't go any lower than that. Because again, at that point, you're just introducing a little bit extra rest on the muscle that you're trying to grow.
Do you think that when he was lifting the weight in the concentric portion, that he was eliciting somewhat of a active insufficiency response by bringing it up?
Possibly. It was hard to see from that angle, and I didn't look too closely at the path of the elbow. It's really common if you see people do bicep curls. I mean, the elbows should almost stay locked into the side, but people are so concerned with trying to get the weight all the way up that a lot of times you see the elbow kind of come, up and forward.
I looked at I couldn't tell either, but I looked at the shoulder slightly and kind of sussed it out from there. It seemed like it traveled a little bit. It wasn't a lot, but
and usually it's pretty obvious if someone makes a big display of it. So the fact that I didn't notice makes me think it probably happened to a slight extent, but nothing that was really too bad. I'm not really concerned about active insufficiency at the top of a bicep curl. My bigger concern would be if that elbow started traveling forward and then the tension comes off the bicep. So really, the function of the bicep, supinate the wrist, flex the lower arm and flex the shoulder. But you're not really trying to flex the shoulder much with your bicep during a bicep curl. So think about, the way that you were sitting, keeping those elbows largely locked in by your sides. And whether you have your hands facing somewhat outwards or more straight ahead isn't going to be as big of a deal. But try and keep that elbow largely locked in by your side and keep the tension on your bicep. And if you can't go up all the way, like the dumbbell doesn't have to get right next to your shoulder. Depending on where your elbows are, it might only get to like right about mid chest. And you can still have a large degree of tension on your biceps in that position. But yeah, what else did you notice?
I think the cadence was a bit up and down, maybe, if that makes sense, a bit a hit and miss. So if you look at his first rep, I've got an imaginary stopwatch in my brain, and I like to think when someone does the first lift, then each repetition as it goes up and down, it becomes slower because your muscle fibers burn out. I didn't see that really happen at all from point A to point B until quite a few reps down the line. Then all of a sudden it suddenly slowed down a lot. So it might have went from say 2 seconds up, wherever it was. Then all of a sudden it went to 3.5 seconds up, almost within a single rep. The other thing I saw was the grip. For the most part, he was gripping onto it very firmly, but some parts he almost wavered his fingers a little bit. So I think whether you do a looser grip or a clenched grip, try and keep it consistent. Because therefore, if your repetition when you're lifting repetition, weight for repetition, from A to B to C, when you're doing the exercise over and over again, you can standardize your technique. So therefore, okay, I did say, I don't know, a minute of time to tension, or I did 10 reps, or however you want to log it. You know that every single rep was with the same technique. Therefore, next week you can go back to it. You're using the same technique, so you can actually measure it, and it can be managed that way. What other things did you see?
I guess to touch on repetition cadence, I think if you're going to lift relatively quickly, counting reps is a good idea. There seemed to be about a 1 second up, 3 seconds down cadence, in which case I'm glad it's recorded. Anytime there's more of a controlled effort, whether the reps are lifted slowly or lowered slowly or both, that's when I tend to think time under tension is a little bit better of a metric than counting repetitions. Because if in this video, let's say he lifted 1 second up, 3 seconds down, and counted to 10 reps as he did, that would be a very different time under tension if it was 1 second up and then 4 seconds down. Another thing that Jonathan's pointed out in the past that I really like in terms of repetition speed is your last repetition. Your repetitions should be getting slower over time, but usually when you're nearing momentary muscular failure, normally that last repetition is almost excruciatingly slow. You're trying to lift as fast as you can. You're trying to lift as hard as you can, but that weight is just stubbornly refusing to move. And in looking at that, maybe I'm just kind of touching on the next point. I think you probably had another couple of reps in the tank. And I would have at least liked to have seen the attempt at another repetition. I know at least your right arm, with how you were sitting, that last repetition started to slow down a little bit at the top. But really, you're getting the most resistance about halfway through the position in the range of movement. So unless you're getting stuck there, probably at least have another repetition in the tank. And even when you're at that sticking point halfway through the range of movement, you should still forcibly contract against that for as long as you can. In the book Power of 10 by Adam Zickerman, he recommends holding that sticking point and trying to push against it for 10 seconds before you can comfortably feel like you've hit momentary muscular failure. 10 seconds can be a little rough sometimes, but I would have liked to see the attempt at another repetition or two. And hopefully the mindset isn't to just hit 10 reps, or maybe since he hit 10 with each arm, maybe next time he's going to grab the slightest increase in weight for his next set of bicep curls. I would be fine with that too. But the next point I would have made is I would have liked to seen the failure line approach a little bit closer.
Yeah, I'm just looking back at it now. 2 secs, sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, so I just looked back at it. In my head, I counted about 1.5 seconds for the first rep, roughly. Now, his last repetition was about, in terms of concentric phase, about 1.75, maybe 2 seconds. What we're looking at is, like, what I say to people is like a guideline, so it's not a rule, but a guideline might be that you double the time it takes for you to perform the concentric phase from the first to the last rep. So if it was 1.5 seconds up on the first rep, keep going to the point where it will take you about 3 seconds. Now it will be different for different body parts, different movements, different ranges. Some long range of movements may have a higher, oxygen toll on your body. Yep. So you might have to really grind it out. And if it's not a safe exercise, you might not grind it out. In which case you might use a different method to reach training failure. You might, do some rest pause, static holds. They're a good one. If you're really not sure, guys, just get into an isometric hold, a static hold. Just hold it. In that case, a bicep curl, just lift it maybe to 90 degrees. Just hold it for as long as you can. Don't look at the clock. Don't worry about anything. Just wait until it goes down. Then eventually it will lower your arm for you. So that's probably one way you can be sure you've done the job. But we're being perhaps pedantic here, very pernickety, but you're going to ask us to critique things. We're offering you our best critique. So the idea is you take this on board, go back to the drawing board of your training, and if you're not getting results, here's some things that you can use to better your training results.
And I would also say that set, the way that I saw it, is better than most sets I see most people do at the gym. The form was better. It was more standardized. The intensity of effort was higher than most people I see at the gym. So the more subtle the details Jonathan and I pick out, the more of a pat on the back it is, and the bigger a compliment it is. So don't think for a second that we're coming down on you, because we're not. We're just offering some little subtleties that can take this from being like a 8.5, 9 out of 10 in terms of that was a pretty good set, man. Well done, to thinking God damn, that was a real grinder. Yeah. So what else? I thought I had something else. Oh, one experiment that I've talked about a couple of times before that you might be interested in trying is do a bicep curl, 1 second up, 2 seconds down, and have the same weight with each arm. So your arms are essentially use the same weight during the set of curls. So each arm is about the same. Maybe your left arm is slightly stronger because your right one struggled just a little bit more on the end. And with one arm, do 1 second up, 2 seconds down, and track with a timer and just record it is the easiest way to do it. How long it takes you to get to momentary muscular failure using an effective range of movement. And then with the other arm, go as slow as you can in each direction. And you're still going to have the same relative time in every single position throughout that range of movement. But what I think you'll find, and what I've done with myself and what I've seen in other people, is lifting really, really, really slowly. You're going to have probably almost twice as long time under tension to the point of momentary muscular failure as you did lifting very, very quickly and explosively with one arm and then lowering it. And the reason for that is lifting slower, not that you have to go super slow on every single exercise, is you get better cross bridging in the myofibril lifting slower. Now you still have the same amount of cross bridging happening, but you get a better power stroke when you slow it down. And if you look at the force velocity curve, that's the faster you lift it, it produces a very small amount of force, and it's exponential if you lift slower, how much torque you're producing in the targeted muscle by lifting slower. So if you're going to, I tend to think you should either move as slowly as you can, or you should lift almost as quickly as you can. And if you're going to go anywhere in between, I think it's almost a good idea, if you can, to try and standardize your rep speed, whether you count in your head, whether you have a metronome, pick some time that you feel comfortable with, 3, 4, 5 seconds up, down, whatever, just pick a time and try and stick to that as much as you can. So you can be consistent, because slowing your reps down, as odd as it sounds, will make you stronger. And
Yeah.
Jonathan, I appreciate you letting me rant a little bit about that.
Well, no, I think you're completely right. The common dogma is that we lift really, really fast. We just have to lift fast enough to hold a weight, which doesn't have to be fast at all. Mm-hmm. My weights, I'm going to put my video up in a second that I uploaded today on the private paid membership group, which is the Carnivore crew. So this was me doing a chest press. I did pre-exhaust prior to this exercise. I'm still having some issues with my shoulder, but there's room for improvement. And I know Jerome will spot it straight away, but I thought I'd post it anyway, so I'm going to try and find the video if I can.
Well, and after watching you train too, I don't know if you're actually counting in your head, or maybe it's just years of lifting. All of your repetitions are almost exactly the same duration. So whether you actually time them or not, you're definitely very, very close. So that people don't have to lift super slow, they don't have to lift super quick, but whether you go one way or the other, it just allows you to be more objective in measuring progress, is kind of the long-winded point that I'm trying to make.
Definitely, yeah. I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it with audio as well, because I put a fantastic song on the thing. If I can find it. This way. Right, so I'm guessing you can see
I love watching training footage. It makes me so happy.
I went nuts.
So
Do you see
as
when I
a
looked up at the camera like 15 seconds before then? I was like, Jerome's going to watch this. Better beast it.
well, I was counting in my head, your repetition cadence, and it was started, a little bit more than 2 seconds up, got to about 3 seconds, and that last rep was a real grinder, and then you were anywhere from like 6, 7, 8 seconds on the way down, probably about 7 most of those reps. But yeah, that last one just brought me a lot of joy.
Yeah.
There's
Fun, that.
not much and maybe as a point of information, Jonathan knocked out a really, really hard set without any screaming, without any shaking, without
No
any
noise.
without a lot of the other nonsense. There should be probably some expressible degree of discomfort, but I know how hard that last repetition is, where you're pushing, and you could see the point where the chest was no longer the prime mover and it starts shifting to anterior deltoid and tricep, and you're pushing, it slows down, and then you're just like dead stop and then just barely grind through it. Yeah, I could watch that stuff all day.
So what was wrong with it?
What was wrong with it? I mean, like your one arm was slightly like higher than
It's
the other.
flared, yeah.
And I know you could breathe, and I think some of it was the camera angle, but it looked like your chin was a little bit more tucked than I normally like. But I think a lot of that was the angle too. The biggest reason people don't want to tuck the chin too much is it can obstruct your breathing. But like I said, I think that was more the angle than anything else. And in a certain sense, the other thing I'm glad I didn't see either is people have the opposite tendency to push their head back, and then they can really
Which will make you weaker.
Yeah,
Make you weaker as well.
and you can strain your neck.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, I'm glad that we looked at both of those movements, the bicep curl and then your chest press, because I apologize, I forget the gentleman's name. That was a really good set of bicep curls. Like I said, it was much better
Mike,
than much better than most of what I see in the gym. And you should be proud of that set. And just the little tiny things that Jonathan and I are trying to point out is it can be the difference between getting everything out of one set and sometimes having to do 2, 3, 4, 5 sets. So
yeah, what you'll find as well, Mike, is if you implemented all the little things that we suggested, say out of your one set, say you got maybe 85% of the way there to like getting all results, we're talking about like 5, 10, maybe 15% here. When you're training with like high intensity principles, you're not doing 4, 5, 6 sets. You're doing like 1, 2, maybe 3 per body part, and then you're spent. So in that workout there, I did I think it might have been today actually. I did 3 for chest, 3 for shoulders, 3 for triceps. Different stuff. I did some rest pause. I did some isometric contraction work. All different things. But yeah, you'll find your training volume will go down a lot if you implement these things. So don't try and replicate that one set of bicep curls 4 times over, because it's ill-advised. You probably just get burnt out. Right. Taurine. What do you reckon towards that?
I recently started taking taurine, given that my sleep has been atrocious for the last month. In my own N=1 experience, taurine for me is I feel like I have more energy. I take 1 teaspoon twice a day, so 2.5 grams twice a day, 5 grams a day. Seems to be a pretty decent dose for me. Harry Serpanos, his channel, I know he's a big proponent of taurine, and the guy is smart beyond belief. Bart K has also espoused a lot of the benefits of taurine. Jonathan has, so you could speak to those at length far more than I could. So I won't even try. But at the moment, unless I'm lazy or forgetful and miss a dose, I take 2.5 grams of taurine twice a day.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I think that's what I suggested to you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you said 2 to 3 grams. So.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, for most people, they may find it useful, they may not. I don't know. It seems to be about 50-50 of people, but the people I notice that do take it and find a benefit, they seem to want to take it and keep taking it. They're almost a bit like, oh, did I take it? I did take it today, didn't I? They sort of consciously think about it. So it tells me that they find a great benefit from it. It's a potent antioxidant, believe it or not. It helps regulate your gut microbiome, especially your pH. it'll ensure that. Sorry, I got a little label here. Interesting. Yes. It also helps with eye health as well. Helps with the production of glutathione. Helps with other detoxification pathways in the body. Helps with liver health. Helps with bile acid production. Helps to reduce the likelihood of left ventricular hypertrophy. Helps increase training endurance. Helps, for me, it seems to improve my asthma a little bit, so I don't really use inhalers anymore. I think that's a multifaceted thing of like the diet and all that sort of thing, but it does seem to help, I think. Helps stimulate GABA production, so you can sleep better at night. There's a few other very obvious things. I can't think of them anymore. Yeah, I think for most people, if you train, you go to the gym, you train quite hard, I don't see a point in not taking it. If you cook your meats too heavily, you'll lose some taurine from it. So they're the sort of people that benefit from it a lot. So people like me who just chuck food in the air fryer and just cook it for whatever it comes up on the screen. It'll either be raw or it'll be cooked. Most of the time it's pretty well cooked, so you'll lose some taurine. So yeah, I think it's useful. In terms of how it works in the body in a lot of ways because there's lots of receptor sites for it. There's lots of what you call, like, I think they're called TOR receptors all over the body. So it does work in too many ways. It's like you could write a book on it and it'd be like every single reception in the body was somehow affected by it almost. So yeah, check out Harry's channel there. He's done all the research. He's got a book that's like 600 pages on it. So he'll be able to best advise you in that sort of regard. But I use myself somewhere between like 5 and 10 grams a day. What you can do is if you want supplement with it, but you don't want the stress of like tapering it and staggering it in different serving sizes, just put a scoop in a bottle of water and just drink the water throughout the day. It still works. It also reduces myostatin within the body slightly, so it's useful for building muscle. Not to a great degree, but it does apparently help with that. I think there's limitations to that kind of belief. I wouldn't be taking it thinking you're going to turn to a Belgian blue cow, but I think it may amplify your results a bit. But for me, the main thing is detox pathways, better regulation of electrolytes, better gut function, and more training endurance. So your heart rate won't go as high when you're training.
Yeah, I think it also helps protect against oxidative damage in the mitochondria. I thought I heard Harry say once, but
Correct.
I don't.
That is correct.
I need to buy his book on it.
Well, it's not his book, but
Oh, okay.
he should write a book. Ooh.
It'd be 1,500 pages of science speak.
I got Sean Baker to interview him. I think it was like last week or something, and it was like a 50-minute talk on like one or two things to do with taurine. I was like,
I was going to say it's probably.
I said to Sean's people, you need like 4 or 5 hours of him to get your money's worth.
I was going to say it was probably 2 questions, and Harry probably spoke 98% of the time.
Yeah, the thing is, he's got a lot of experience. He does seem to know his stuff.
Yeah,
I could ask him about anything, like anything to even stuff he doesn't know. He'd find a way to interpret the biochemistry, and I don't think I know many people that understand biochemistry as well as he does. When you look at the biochemical process in the body, it's a giant map, so it's astounding.
Yep. Yeah.
Where or how can I learn to do body workouts for strength and building muscle mass without gym equipment? Jerome's got an excellent video on that, or at least with limited equipment. And I'm making that video, I think, next week with Sophie. She's going to record it. So I'm going to take some of Jerome's stuff and sell it off as my own ideas.
Go ahead.
Some of, is it Doug's stuff? And a few other people's stuff. So I've come up with I think about 8 on exercise you can do without any equipment at home. And that'll work the entire body.
Nice.
What do you say to Mango, Jerome?
Yeah, I would say for £3 Jonathan has an excellent ebook on his website talking about exercise selection, and that included body weight exercises for basically every major muscle group in the body and a lot of the minor ones. I have a video on my YouTube channel I think it's titled something like $50 for all the home exercise equipment you'll ever need. Basically, set of yoga blocks, a yoga belt, and a heavy duty toe strap, run you 50 to $60. And you could do time static contraction protocol and exercise every muscle in the body with just that equipment. Now, time static contraction is extremely brutal, and it takes a little bit of getting used to, but it can be highly effective. And I use it quite a bit here in my personal training studio. And be sure to watch Jonathan's video when it comes out. But the first 3 British pounds I would spend would be getting that ebook, because we put a chart in this ebook saying it, and there was a subcategory if you had free weights, if you had machines, and then if you had like body weight type exercises, what exercises would you do for, quads? What would you do for your chest? What would you do for your triceps? And it's all covered in that book.
Yeah. I was going to plug it on the screen now. It's about 50 seconds long, the ad for it, but MP4 files only, apparently, so can't do that. But yeah, it's a good book. I've had about 40 or so people buy it. It's had good feedback overall, and it is useful if you're really stuck and you don't know what to do, or if you just want something to look at and pick at random. I want to do a chest or tricep, and it'll come up with a good plan for you.
And to say one last piece about that book, for people who haven't heard the spiel already, is that the reason that we put that book together is because there was a bodybuilder that wrote a book about the best exercises for every muscle group, and it's being sold on his website for $300. And it was something that we put together that biomechanically is every bit as sound, and it's, we're selling it for 1% of the cost. So that's the last thing I'll say about that book, but that would be kind of my first recommendation. And then check out my video and check out Jonathan's upcoming video.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Next question. We're probably going to wrap this up soon, guys. I think Jerome needs away.
I always do.
Yeah, feel free to drop off for a sec if you need to.
No, I'm good.
All right. He's got a bottle underneath him. He's catching it as we speak. So Jeremiah asked, how important is changing the order of exercises you're doing? I used to hear if you don't, your body learns what you're doing and you'll plateau. I've not experienced this since I've been back. Okay, so Jerome's back in the gym for a few weeks now, I think. Maybe a month or 2. So Jeremiah is. And he trained in the past. This kind of comes down to like the muscle confusion principle promoted by Weider et al. What do you think towards that?
I think most, if not all, of the benefits of muscle confusion and the periodization of your routines are going to be mental. Sometimes it feels nice to just switch up your routine. If someone's making progress by switching the exercises that they're doing, the overwhelming majority of the time, those improvements are just neuromuscular. It's not necessarily because you're experiencing a size and strength increase in the muscles that you're trying to work. I said this earlier, but literally every single exercise that you perform has some kind of skill components. The more that you recruit that exact neuromuscular pathway, the more efficient you become at it. So if you only ever do push-ups, or if you only ever do one exercise and then you do a different exercise right after it, by switching things up a little bit, it's a slightly different neuromuscular pathway. And there might be a small step backward at first, but then usually there's some degree of improvements on that. With my clients here in my personal training studio, one thing I've had to point out to people is if we're doing an upper body day and we do a chest press and then we do a back movement and then we do a shoulder press, the shoulders and the triceps are heavily fatigued after that chest press, so that by the time when we get to the shoulder press, their numbers probably won't be nearly as impressive as they were back when we were doing full body workouts. Because when I do a full body workout with someone, we might do a chest press, or we might do a push movement, a pull movement, a leg movement, something for the trunk, and then we might go back to a push movement in a different plane of movement. So those muscles have had a longer time to rest before we're working them again. So some of the muscle fibers have been able to recover and are ready for another exhaustive exercise. Whereas if you reduce that time between exercises, the performance is going to be significantly reduced. So you don't need to switch the order of your exercises. You don't need to introduce a wide variety of exercises. And you certainly don't need to change your routine frequently at all. If you mentally feel like you kind of want to switch things up, I would say go for it. But all that really matters in terms of stimulating a size and strength increase is intensity and then recovery.
How often did Dorian Yates change his training routine, Jerome?
My understanding is he followed basically the same blood and guts routine, using almost exactly the same exercises for his entire Olympia reign from 92 to 97.
Correct.
And if you look at most of the pros up until maybe the last like 10 to 15 years, guys for a long time only used a couple of basic movements for any single muscle group. It wasn't nearly the assortment of movements that you see, so ubiquitously in modern bodybuilding. There seems to be this obsession with doing 20 different movements for triceps now. And I just don't think it's supported.
Yeah. I think you just have to stimulate the muscle and that will do the job. To target different muscle groups or parts of muscle groups, you can simulate it a little bit differently. Like I mentioned earlier, guys, I did 3 sets for chest, 3 sets for shoulders, 3 sets for triceps. If my shoulders and chest were in a better state, I might be able to have done 2 sets each. I just used volume and different exercises to get close to that intensity or that kind of stimulus that I needed to build muscle. Now, ideally, I'd have kept the same exercises in the same order every single week, week after week after week. The problem with that is your muscles do get fed up with it, or at least your joints do. After a certain point, when you reach a certain level of strength, so like Jerome's strength or my strength, your body's not meant to naturally lift that much weight. You're going to have to change the exercise pattern very slightly. So it might mean that, for example, today in that video you just saw, I was doing a neutral grip chest press. Next time I might do a wider grip chest press. There's benefits to each, there's pros and cons. I know, for example, if I was having issues, for example, there with my shoulder being too flared on one side, if I was then to do a wider grip rather than a neutral grip, I'd just be exacerbating that effect even more, because then I'm more likely to have my shoulders all over the shop. Whereas if they're more tucked in, it's less likely to happen. So that's why we say like training footage is really useful. We can chuck it to me, send it to me on Google Drive or something, and I can look at it as well. And Jerome can, and we can go live on video and talk about it for 10 minutes. As well, adding to that point, I mean, there's loads of intensifiers you can use. And you'll find a lot of the time, if you can use an intensifier effectively for any given exercise, you're able to stimulate all the muscle fibers that you need to stimulate. Like in the example of, say you're doing a decline chest press of some kind. Okay, you will do that, and effectively you'll feel it in your chest, in your lower chest. But then, if you've not done it in a while, you'll feel it in the upper chest as well. It doesn't mean it just works as lower chest. It's just, I think I think Jerome said earlier, like the closer you can get to, technical muscular failure, the more muscle fibers will be recruited. It's just some have a slightly more preferential treatment for some versus others. The idea is to just work on your body and try and iron out all the creases so get the body you want. Right now I'm trying to build up my front delts, but it's near enough impossible to find a front delt exercise that I can do safely. I can't shoulder press in that position because my shoulder's too impinged at the moment. I can't do a front raise because it means the weight is too distant from my body, so it hurts my lower back and hips. So I'm a bit stuck really. All I can really do is a neutral grip shoulder press, which the gym when I'm at my own house doesn't have. So this is why you might see me post a video or an exercise I'm doing, and next week it's different. It's quite situational, but if you're otherwise healthy, you can just nail the same exercise over and over again. Milk it for all it's worth. That's what I think.
And one other advantage to not switching up your routine is it gives you more objectivity in terms of your ability to measure progress. So if you follow the exact same routine for 12 weeks at a time, then but if you start with chest, then do a back movement, then do a leg movement, and then the next week you switch it up and do legs first, you'll probably see a significant improvement because you've already introduced some physical stress to the body, and your heart rate's up quite a bit by the time you eventually get the legs. So is it going to make a big difference in the long run in terms of hypertrophy and maximizing your physique goals? No. The longer you stretch that time frame out, the less details actually matter. But in terms of like a week to week monitoring your progress and then being able to make the appropriate adjustments, I tend to think the less you switch your routine, the better.
Yeah, well said. I might see if there's a video. Might put a video up of someone from the group, maybe. Or should I do my hack squat, or should I do my other shoulder press, or should I do your shoulder press?
Whatever.
We'll do your one because you look quite handsome in it. All right, so
I must say
you
that
guys
was...
I need to find her.
And while Jonathan is looking for that, I'm going to say that starting next week, Jonathan's going to be coaching me for a bodybuilding show, which will be new to me. And I will be adding training footage, diet logs, weight logs, stuff like that in the Carnivore Crew Facebook group that we're doing. I will try and update that daily, but I'm going to be recording all my workout footage here in the studio and uploading it directly to the group. Some of it will make its way to YouTube, but if you really want to see all the behind the scenes of everything that goes into a bodybuilding competition, the struggles, the successes, the good and the bad, you really need to join that Facebook group.
Yeah, I think it'd be very important to show people this and be very in depth as well. I think people won't.
Yeah, one thing I'm going to say just before you get started is my fingers now are open around the bar. Now I don't immediately just lift weight. I start building tension in my shoulders and slowly start pushing against it as I wrap my fingers around the bar. That's kind of a visual indicator that I've started to push against it so I can track my time under load.
Yeah. I like the jeans as well. That helps.
Yeah.
Right.
I am a dad. Yeah. It's important to be in dad mode all the time.
Look at those quads and calves, Christ.
Yeah, those are relaxed fit jeans too.
Yeah. That's the problem us old men have, isn't it? I see. So you got your hands clasped. I imagine you've got like the most comfortable position on the pads of your hands.
Yep. So I'm really not even squeezing the bar that hard.
Yeah, and the grip's wide enough that it's not directly overhead, but it's slightly outside of the shoulder girdle, so you've still got tension through the delts.
Mm-hmm. Triceps too, especially near the top.
Yeah.
It is a pretty wide grip for a machine, which is interesting from a design perspective. I really want neutral. I'm going to have my dad weld handles on the front so I can have a neutral grip for that.
That'd be handy, yeah. As well as that, if you can get maybe like in front of your eyes, maybe, and some slightly out, that might be better. Mm-hmm. Then you could just get your upper back against the pad, do like an incline chest press sort of movement as well.
I thought about getting a number of wedges so I can kind of turn that into a few different exercises.
Yeah.
But the problem with, training in this method, training super slow, is it's really boring to watch.
It does take a bit. I mean, I put this in double speed, but that missed the point because the point is to see exactly what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you sound like with your girlfriend?
No comment.
I had to. I'm just listening to that. I'm like, oh my god. That sounds like hard work, though. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only like what? I guess it's like 25 kilos a side or something.
Well, yeah, this particular set was a 45-pound plate on each side, but then the whole machine is it's some pretty heavy duty steel. So it took two people to assemble that machine. So I don't know how actual heavy the moment arm is.
It looks like a heavy machine. Just the way you're lifting it, it looked quite heavy.
Yeah. And I wish, in a sense, the problem is because it's just plate loaded leverage. It's a perfectly even resistance curve. I'm getting the same weight at the bottom that I am at the top, and a shoulder press overhead like that is you have a positive strength curve. Excuse me, in that movement. So if there was a way, I suppose I could put bands on it, and I might try that at some point to make it harder at the top compared to the bottom. That might be something worth trying to adjust the resistance curve a little bit. But yeah, super slow exercise is it's extremely tough, but really boring to watch.
Yeah, my training's a bit more explosive, but I think I emphasize the eccentric phase. I'm quite one thing I'm quite I try to be on top of is like the turnaround. You know, from where you go from concentric to eccentric and vice versa. I might actually share one more if we've got time.
Sure.
Apparently I've got a hack squat on here somewhere. For now to use this thing. There we go. Yeah, sharing, isn't it? My gym plays pretty wacky music.
There's nothing wrong with that. 80s pop.
I quite like it. It's better than what it usually is, honestly.
So what I really like in this video is you're not going all the way up. You're definitely keeping the tension on the quads.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to limit the hip movement, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I'm just trying to get the quad. For me, it's a quad exercise. I don't want my glutes to be activated anything more than they have to be. I'm pressing my lower back very hard against the pad as well.
Yep.
You'll see here my calves at the top. You'll actually see them shake.
Yep.
I'm pressing from my toes because I'm trying to maximize my quad recruitment. You'll see as the set goes on and on, you'll see all the muscles around my legs sort of twitch. That's, you know, as the time tension goes on and on, the fatigue picks up. Everything else comes into play.
Yep.
So for me, my difficulty is getting right to the point where the quads are fired. So I just have to rack it there. But that's an example of like an all right set. Like it wasn't optimal, but it was all right, you know.
Yeah. Well, and then as your knees come forward and as your shins fold forward, that dorsiflexion in the calves has to be offset by some degree of plantar flexion in the calves as you're standing back up. So my client, Matt, that I've put his results on a couple of videos, he put an inch on his calves in 6 months while losing 50 pounds, and we didn't do one calf exercise. So granted, like he had a prolonged layoff from training, and that was a big part of it, but there definitely is calf involvement in compound leg pressing movements.
Yeah, I think it depends how you grip. I mean, what you don't see in that video, guys, is I'm wearing the rider wear shoes, and I'm actually gripping my toes into the plate before I even start lifting. I think as much as like they say, oh, you know, push with your heels, I've never had more growth as a result of pushing through my heels ever.
I think if you were doing a leg press and your feet were higher up on the platform, where it's a little bit more glute driven, you would almost have to push through the heels. And squatting may be a bit different, but I think a lot of that, especially if it's like a squat type movement, is driving through the heels more so to maintain a better center of gravity. And Jonathan and I know this, and maybe this is weird to explain to somebody else, but pushing through your toes fires the quads in a weird way. And a lot of times when you're posing on stage, you're often told to like try and grab the stage with your toes. And you can feel it almost feels like it's creating, you know, like a deeper separation in all the muscles of the quads.
Yeah. So
I can totally see that on a hack squat. And a hack squat anyways is far more quad driven. It's almost like a sissy squat in that regard.
Yeah, I'm always a bit torn between the hack squat and the pendulum at my gym. So I've got access to both, and I've actually got access to a V squat as well. The problem with the V squat is I have to load it up with like 20 to 30 plates each side minimum, which is really annoying. So I worked out bang for buck in terms of putting the least amount of weight on the equipment. The hack squat seems to be about right. I have to be careful though not to sort of rush the reps and things, because, you know, like Jerome said, if I say get to the top of that movement, okay, I'll have less tension for the quads, more through my hips and lower back. Then also it means I've got more endurance in the quads. I'm not trying to build more, I'm just trying to fire the quads as quickly as I can, get them burnt out without extra stress on the rest of my body. So yeah, I would have more glute activation if I, you know, pressed my heels, went all the way to the top, but the set would have lasted so much longer. And I'm not trying to put more weight in my back for a moment longer than I have to. It's just to get the tension on there. And like I said about the leg press, my toes on the leg press, say the bottom of the plate is like here. My heel is about here. So my heel is actually off the bottom of the leg press in every circumstance. I've got good ankle mobility, so why not do it? Yeah, it means for me as well, I don't. I mean, if my legs are too high, my lower back's more like to round as well as I go deeper into the rep. So,
Yeah,
there's a lot of nuance to it, I think.
that's why I'm surprised. I'm surprised you can do the pendulum squat, because for a lot of people, the pendulum squat, especially near the bottom of the range of movement, sometimes the way it articulates can be a little weird for some people, but you seem to have found a good range of movement on that works well for you.
Yeah, it's quite. I mean, it's very hit and miss with those sort of movements. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I'll try it. So I'll do a set without any weight on it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go through, same sort of cadence as that sort of video. I'm like, no, I can't do this. No, I'll just dump the exercise. I just won't do it. Won't even try it again. I won't go to failure. So it's frustrating, because I know I used to be able to do like 6 plates aside for good reps, like when I was really, really strong. Now I'm looking back thinking I'm doing 2 plates aside and everyone's laughing at me.
Yeah, but I mean, in a lot of ways, like I used to do 65-pound dumbbell curls with a little bit of body English and, the really explosive concentric. And I would start feeling a lot of pain in my rear delt from just lowering that and putting too much sway when I was doing these curls. And I never quite could consistently do 70s, but I would do 65 for sets of 4 to 6. And now I curl 30s, and I curl them stupid slow, and my arms are a half inch bigger than they were when I was curling 65s. So if you can find a way to keep tension on the muscle and work it hard, in a lot of ways, using less weight is a lot smarter, provided, you can get enough intensity and train close to failure. So I don't miss loading up 1,000 pounds plus on a leg press. Who the hell wants to load plates all day?
Yeah, it's tiring. I prefer a different piece of equipment for that sort of thing. I think it surprised me now these sort of, gyms, not gyms, but like manufacturers make this piece of equipment. The goal isn't to put 10 plates aside. If it's a bodybuilding piece of equipment, so, I want to target this part of my quads in this angle, whatever, fine.
Yeah.
You want to do it at the least amount of weight, the least amount of stress and impact. You want to be able to get to the point where you're just adding on like a 2.5 kilo plate each side every few weeks, and it's really difficult. I think people think like you said, it's like more weight's better. Like we're saying, yes, you want to become stronger. We want to be as strong as possible, but we want to use also at the same time the least amount of weight as possible. So people do, the reverse banded hack squat. So put a band beneath where the shoulder pads are, then have it banded to the top. Effectively, all they're doing is they're slingshotting when they get to the bottom. We use less weight just by banding it the other way around. So band the bottom with the top of the shoulder pad, and therefore you don't have to use an extra 40 kilos. I don't get that.
It's free advertising. If somebody makes a leg press and we see, someone loading up 1,000, 2,000 pounds on a leg press, someone's like, holy crap, I'm strong. And then there's a litany of videos out there of guys leg pressing tons of weight, and it's free advertising for the company. So I get it. But at the same time, an incline is a literal tool that exists to make lifting large amounts of weight easier. In bodybuilding and in strength training, the amount of weight that you're using is the measure. It's not the goal. Your goal is to safely overload the muscle and to cause the stimulus to take place. And the amount of weight that you're using, or the amount of repetitions or volume or whatever it is, that's measure. That's one way to measure progress.
I'm trying to think of an example where I've got a heavy weight.
Yeah. So I don't think I recorded it, but that same shoulder press seated, I mean, I've done over a 300-pound single seated overhead press on it. I had 300 pounds just in plates on it, and I can press it for a single rep with no leg drive. But the amount that I use on a working set is like, it's like 110, I think, on the bar, and just a longer time under load and as much tension and intensity as I can generate.
Should I show my V squat?
Yes.
All right. So this was about, I'll find it in a second. Facebook. I won't turn audio on this one, it's annoying. Okay, do you see it?
Yep.
So here's my fashionable red Dr. Skin's tights. This is back like 5, maybe 6 years ago. So here I've
Match-
got like all the plates on, matching, of course,
Matching shoes. Yep.
Yeah, it's important. I like red, guys. My legs were enormous back then. But you can see I've always practiced the correct range of motion. Although obviously I'm rushing it to be, because I'm basically being a cock trying to show off. But you'll see my range of motion is excellent.
Yeah, you're
Because
not
my
going all
hamstrings
the
touch my calves.
I was gonna say you're keeping the tension on your quads.
Not too bad for a beginner.
No, not going too low. I get really nervous when I see a lot of hamstring and calf contact, but it makes me really nervous. But that was good.
Yeah, I won't put up the leg press. That's when I did like, I think it's like 650 kilos or something once. That was horrible. I think I did 4 reps, but the 4th rep was like I'm like pushing my knees, like don't die.
Yeah.
That was dangerous. I won't put that up because it's horrendous. But I didn't hurt myself. But it's one of those videos you're like,
We're trying to be
Yeah.
good influences here. We're not going to put the training footage fuck ups that we've had on camera for everyone to
No.
see. Those are for the Facebook group.
yeah, that's right. I mean, I wish I still had my squat video from years ago. So my brother and I think he's in first year of uni, so I must have been about 21 at the time. I think it was 245 kilos for 8 reps. So the first 6 reps were arse to grass, full range of motion. The last 2 are a bit, maybe half reps, but I was well chuffed with that.
I bet.
And since then, my back's been fucked. So yeah. I mean, Jeremy, are any of the lifts that you've done which you're quite proud of?
I mean, when I was lifting more
some more just
conventionally,
Yeah.
conventionally, like I did a 550 single on a deadlift, no straps. Just my
That's a good
squats.
start.
Yeah, my squats were okay. 405 or 415 for sets of 4 to 6. I used to just really train barbell movements, 4 to 6 reps. My bench was never great. My bench was never great. I struggled to get over like 250 flat. And my incline, oddly enough, best I ever did was 275 for 3 on an incline. But oddly enough, I was able to eclipse the flat bench numbers when I slowed my reps down and started doing a 4-4 cadence, training like Mike Mentzer heavy duty style. But I stopped benching shortly after that because same kind of thing, rear delt started to have some pain. And I basically said, the second I feel a pain, the slightest little twinge, I'm like, nope, like we're done. We're doing something else.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to calculate my one. So my bench was for 2 reps, 365 back in the day. That's when I actually bothered to do it. My squat was, I'm trying to convert it for you guys, 540 for 6 full range of motion reps and 2 partials.
Yeah.
My deadlift was either 1 or 2 reps, I can't remember, but it was 550 back in the day. But I never trained at that sort of rep range, so I just,
It's impressive with your bench. You've got those long ass arms too.
Yeah, the bench surprised me. My brother's actually really good at bench. So he's a lifetime natty. He just uses like creatine and stuff and a bit of caffeine pre-workout. But he's got like maybe 2-inch shorter arms than me, and he's about 6 foot. And he's good at benching. Like he's as strong as me, which is quite profound. He's very good at benching, but he's also got that really thick back. I think it's partly because he's got like shorter arms. He's got, if you look at his arms from the side, he's got like quite a thick arm, and his mid back's really thick as well. Then he's not got much lats, so it's a bit. It's funny how we're all built a bit differently.
I have a client whose upper arm, he's like an inch taller than I am, and I swear his upper arms must be at least 3 inches shorter than mine. It seems like his upper arm is like almost ridiculously short. He has almost like T-Rex arms. I'm thinking like if this guy ever gets into competitive bench pressing, he'd probably be pretty goddamn strong. But yeah, I mean, like just basic levers, right? If you have a 10-inch effort lever and someone else has an 11-inch effort lever to try and lift the same amount of weight, the person with the longer lever by 1 inch is going to have to produce 10% more force. So the length of tendon attachments is huge, and the same with the length of your bones in terms of how much weight someone's able to lift on a certain lift. It's why it's completely pointless to compare your numbers to somebody else. It's good for bragging rights, you know, if somebody's numbers are better than another person's, but totally pointless.
I might check up the sprint I did just for a bit of fun. That might. Would you think? Should I do that, or is it too risky?
Yeah, put the sprint up. I'm gonna go run to the restroom quick.
All right. So here's me at Tilly Sports Day. So there's a parents run. So Sophie also did this, and I did a little run. I think I'm in this one. You'll see. No, that's not me.
Go on, Sophie. Do the lane. Do the lane.
Yeah. Yeah, so in that one, Sophie was doing the sports day thing. I'm not sure where my video is. I might try and find it if you guys bear with me. Oh god, I found it. Okay. Yeah. Alright, so I found the video, so I'm going to just share it again. Yeah, so of course, what happened there, guys, was so there's the race, and we all had to put a beanbag on our head. So you know, I did that, took part sort of thing. Then run with it on our head. What I noticed was as I was running, so I had a late start. So the 4 people to the right of me false started. So I basically just grabbed the beanbag after a while. I just put it in my hand and just started running with it because I thought, sod it. If they're going to cheat, I'm going to cheat as well. But yeah, that was good fun. And yeah, Jerome, I just showed Sophie's run as well. Wasn't sure whose one it was, but it's quite funny.
Mike's back on. Excellent.
Yeah.
Those are great videos.
Yeah, quite enjoyed that. It's funny to look back and reminisce. Like I wasn't sure if I was going to do it or not because I thought I'm probably going to die now, but I'm glad I did. I had about 2 days of a lot of pain, but I think I might never be able to run again, so why not? I could. I had the ability to do it, so
Yeah.
you know.
You're a bit contrarian. I think if somebody, you know, puts too strong of a challenge to you, you're gonna feel somewhat threatened and kind of rise up against it.
Well, that's what us men are a bit like, isn't it? We're a bit insecure of our own body's abilities to do things, I think.
Yeah, and that testosterone starts brewing, and we just feel like we have to go to war.
Yeah, well, I thought all those men, a lot of them are quite a bit older than me, maybe like 40 years old, mid-30s, so I thought, why not? About your age, Jerome, actually, fun enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is quite a bit older. Thanks.
quite a bit. All right.
That's why I like 720p, because the gray hairs don't show as much. You can still see them, it's just not quite as evident.
I'm a bit greasy looking because it's quite sweaty, quite hot hair. Mm-hmm. But I don't look that old. That's a dent, by the way, guys. That's where I got a cricket bat cracked through my head when I was younger. So yeah, that's why I've got a giant dent in my head. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Jonathan's form in the gym was off just once, so somebody whacked him in the head with a cricket bat.
Yeah, I got punished.
Just once and only once.
Yeah, since then I've been too afraid. Yeah, I've been quite lucky touch wood. I've been quite lucky of injuries in the gym. I've had like a dumbbell fall on my toes and crack my toe. Other than that, not really had anything. Like I've had like minor strains, like your shoulders maybe a bit funny, your chest a bit funny sometimes, maybe your biceps a bit sore for a few days. But I've never had anything too major, thank God. I've always trained about the same sort of way. I mean, my cadence has slowed down quite a bit since knowing you, Jerome. I mean, my concentric is a bit slower, but the eccentric's always been about the same, I think.
Yeah.
Unless I'm trying to show off for Facebook videos.
Yeah, it's tough. You got to do a certain amount of that, right? You have to kind of pander to what people want to see. My old mentor used to say you have to give people what they want so that you can give them what they need. So to a certain extent, yeah, you got to play the game. You got to wear the right gym clothes, get the sexy training footage up. Unless you're me, then I just work out dressed like a dad.
Yeah, I think today, most days I wear what I call a pump cover, it's like a big baggy t-shirt. Usually wear a vest underneath that, depending what body part it is, but it depends what kind of gym I'm going to, what time of day it is. If it's like a gym day where I know everyone's going to be watching me, I usually just wear something really baggy so it doesn't annoy me too much. But I do soak for it. I do drench the t-shirt, so I'm always paying that price for doing what I want to do, which is not be stared at.
I like working out in hoodies because I like my joints and my body being hot,
Warm.
And I like jeans too because I like, at least on leg day, because I like the compression. Almost like I don't have any fancy snakeskin pants like you do. So I like the compression of jeans on lower body movements. And then I guess after today's conversation, I'll start wearing steel toe boots while I exercise.
Yeah, you're going to turn into we could probably wear the pit vipers as well, just for the good measure.
Yeah, I don't have any. I need to get a pair.
You said about that.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
Carnivore punk rock muscle ramblings. The ultimate punk rock bodybuilding carnivore live Q&A.
Look like the Macho Man Randy Savage when you wear those.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's good fun. All right, we've got no more questions in the chat, guys, so we're going to disappear and leave you guys to it. Thanks for all the questions today, guys. Thank you for the super chat as well, Joey, if you're still here. I appreciate everyone coming by to ask us very good questions. We've had a lot to dig into today, which has been probably quite useful for you guys. Hopefully you can execute the plan from this point on to next week and the week after that, and hopefully get some good gains in the gym.
Awesome.
All right. End broadcast. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.